Welcome to your iconic image. If you want to take control of your image and be a power player in your space, then this is the show for you. Here we will arm you with tools and information to help you grow your brand on purpose. I'm your host, Marlana Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Now let's dive into today's episode. My guest today is Andy Greider. Now, I could tell you that he has a background in marketing and sales, and I could tell you that he's been a business consultant and has grown many businesses of his own. But Andy's superpower is his ability to connect. And he has made networking and giving to others his focus, and he is easily the best at it that I have seen. So welcome, Andy.
Thank you so much, Marlana. It's a pleasure to be here, and thanks for having me.
So let's talk about networking.
Okay.
What should be our intent with networking?
My answer to that's changed actually a good bit over the last decade or so. I used to be tremendously about just it literally being altruistic and giving without any expectation of what would come back. And I still think that has to be at the core of what you do. I still think that if you give with an expectation, you're usually going to end up being disappointed. It's the Buddhist theory of lower expectations lead to higher returns. It's also a karmic thing. But then beyond that, I do think you have to lead with a lot of intent, though. So if you want to make connections that actually have an impact, it's letting people understand in that introduction why you're putting them together, taking the time, and then adding the personality in too is really key these days because there's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise out there. So I think the keys are, making something happen, or in order to make something happen, you have to really explain why, what you see. If I'm connecting you with somebody, I want to say, Marlana can bring this to your world, and this is what you can bring to her world, and this is why. And then try to add a little bit of personality. Maybe you both like roller coasters, or you both like sushi, or you both like Black Sabbath, or whatever it is. And you only learn that by talking to people and asking the questions.
So do you think that there's a difference between networking and connecting?
Yes, absolutely. Connecting is a part of networking. But networking doesn't always include connecting. There's a lot of people that network without ever actually truly connecting. So, I would say there's definitely a difference.
So then how do we network at a higher level?
Again, get to know the people you're talking to, get to know them on a personal level. Being authentic is really the biggest key moving forward. I think as we see generational shifts in the workplace, as we see all the different people that we all have an opportunity to work with now, authenticity matters more than ever. Whether it's Gen X, whether it's the millennial Gen Y, Gen Z, Alpha, doesn't matter, all the way down to kids that are growing up right now, they expect transparency, they expect authenticity, they expect reality of who you are. There's a lot of people that'll tell you, don't put yourself out there that far. Don't take that chance. And I would say hogwash. Put yourself out there, take that chance, be you. You don't have to connect with more than 3 to 5% of the people that you meet for it to be a really valuable thing to do. The other thing I'd say that it really matters is let your brain kind of go into popcorn mode, and think about all the different people you've met in the last 6 months, year, whatever. And when you meet them, learn what they do, and then start looking for similarities, that either they're parallel or there's a direct help, or you ask questions about pain and then you say, hey, I can't solve that, but so-and-so can. Those types of things. So.
Which is an interesting point to bring up, because a lot of people go at networking for their own benefit. And while there can be benefit, I have found personally that the benefit is usually not always direct. So for example, when I go into any kind of event, or if I'm introduced to someone, I want to get to know that person. Whether that person I do business together or not is neither here nor there, quite frankly.
Right.
But I want to know what they do, because I may know somebody that needs them, or vice versa. What are your thoughts on all of that?
I believe in that tremendously. I believe that, and it's always surprising to me when you go at it from that angle, and when you go at it with that mindset, what ends up happening is there are a lot of times that person who started out as somebody you weren't going to end up doing business with, or you weren't going to have a connection with, or you couldn't necessarily even help, somewhere on down the line, they become that person. In fact, I had it happen today in a really interesting twist. Somebody I helped find an internship when they were in high school back in Atlanta is now the CEO of a really brilliant company. And we've reconnected and we're probably going to be doing business. Back then, I did him a favor
Mm-hmm.
and connected him with people I knew. And now it's a whole different world. And it's 20 years later and 25 years later. And, you know, God, I feel old saying that, but yeah, it's 25 years later. And he's, you know, he's really built out this amazing, amazing company. And we got to reconnect. And, you know, again, those seeds were planted long ago as a favor. To your point, though, one other thing I'd add is I do think that while there's altruism, I think there's still enlightened self-interest in what you do, in the fact that, you know, when you're connecting people, that eventually good things end up coming back to you.
Mm-hmm.
So, you know, whether it's a financial, I mean, I don't know that, I think a lot of people look at it as needing to be a financial return.
Right.
To clarify what you said earlier. Now, of course, that can happen. Don't get me wrong. I mean, and I'm never against that happening. That's a good thing.
Yeah, I agree.
Catalyzing deals is a great thing to be able to do. Catalyzing business and business growth is a really good thing to be able to do. And if you happen to pick up a paycheck or a side check out of it, that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. But when that's the intent, that's the only reason you're doing it, you end up kind of being a business pimp, and that's no good.
Right.
You know, that's no good. So it's a fine line, but it's a line.
Yeah.
So
let's talk about things you see that people do wrong other than being a business pimp.
well, I mean, there is that side of things when you get to the point where you're really just over the line, like way over the line, not one step, but a quantum leap. But you know, a lot of times I see people send simple introductions. Marlana meet Andy, Andy meet Marlana. You guys are going to get along. Boom, out. If you do that, the chances are really good that you're not going to actually engender what you were expecting, which was an actual action. You know, if you're going to take the time to make the introduction, make it a good one. And again, add the personality side in. Mention that you'd like to know how the meeting goes, so that they can then reply to you and say, hey, Andy, it was great meeting so-and-so. Thanks for the introduction. Here's where we're at. I also always make sure, you know, and I see people not do this all the time. I offer, if there's anything else I can do, let me know. And I often, if I don't hear back from them, I will follow up myself, because, you know, the fortune is in the follow-up in everything you do. And it's even more so in networking, because it's like a third party or a third channel.
Mm-hmm.
You're removed from it once you make that introduction, unless you reach back out. Now, I've had people say to me, well, you know, what does this mean? You're getting paid if you get us to, you know, no, I took the time to make the introduction.
Right.
I took the care to make the introduction. That's why I'm reaching back out, because I actually saw something here. I want to see you guys be able to actually help each other. You know, and there are times that's huge, and there are times that's just, you know, it just is unrealized, and that's no fun. Unrealized potential is the worst potential.
Agreed. And, you know, I think when you purposefully make introductions, there's a piece of you that becomes invested. So you want to see what happens.
Yeah, you do want to see what happens. And especially when you are darn sure you see something there, you know, you see the pony in the room.
Mm-hmm.
Heck, you might even see a whole stable, you know, of ponies in the room, and then they don't see anything. And I learned that early on. I mean, I learned that mistake early on, and not to make it. The other thing is that before you make an introduction, make sure you're listening to the other people and asking a lot of questions to understand their pain. So you make sure when you're making an introduction, you're not making it haphazardly or with half the information, you know, running off, as one of my old consulting friends would used to say, half cocked, you know, and just, you know, literally, you know, itchy trigger finger kind of thing, you know, go, go, go. So, you know, it's, if you can avoid doing that, you'll really help yourself a lot. And you'll put yourself in a much more valued position. You know, when you start becoming a good connector, what you'll start seeing is people respecting that about you. And when they get an introduction from you, they take it seriously, especially because you've been doing them right. So,
are there types of people or things that you see people do that you would think, you know what, I don't want to have anything to do with this connection, or I absolutely have to connect with this person.
Well, yeah, of course, there's pieces where you're going to see people. One of the things I also try to do is I try to connect by personality.
Mm-hmm.
I try to connect by people I think are going to get along. So if
Mm-hmm.
I've got somebody who is very numbers oriented, very statistic oriented, and then I've got somebody that could, their approach to business is very, very different than that. I may not bother connecting them because I don't think they're going to actually jive. They're not going to gel. They're not going to grok together. They're not going to be able to actually, feel that
Right.
sort of passion at the center. That's one thing I know you do tremendously well is you find commonalities in personality. Everyone you've ever put me with, Marlana, is somebody that I feel at a heart level has been a great connection. And
Mm-hmm.
at a mindset level has been a great connection. So I think we should all look for that as part of how we do things. As far as people that you don't want to connect with, I mean, first of all, there's the no jerk rule.
Mm-hmm.
I don't care how successful somebody is. I don't care how much they could possibly bring even to me or to anyone else. If they're not good people in my standards of good people, and of course that varies from person to person, but I look for people that are compassionate and kind and people that are in it for more than themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And people that get some of the same other values I have as far as, wanting to see an entire organization engaged
Mm-hmm.
and maybe actually, care enough about what else is going on that it's not all about the bottom line. There's other things going on. There's altruism, there's volunteerism, there's other things going on in their organization. You're going to see me do a lot more for somebody like that than somebody who doesn't have those things. And if the somebody who doesn't have those things happens to be not my kind of person past that point where they're standoffish or arrogant or rude, I'm not going to bother. And
Mm-hmm.
again, it doesn't matter how successful they are. I had somebody actually say to me, "You're not going to introduce me to people." And I said, "No, I'm sorry. I'm just not." And they
Right.
said, "Well, why?" I said, "First of all, I value my network, and you've got to respect your network. You've got to respect the people you're introducing." And I said, and realistically, I've built a network of people that are like me,
Mm-hmm.
that have the same values as me, and that's why we all get along, and that's why it's a strong network. And no offense, but you're not going to fit. It's not going to be a good fit for you, and quite frankly, it won't work.
Right.
So no, I'm not. And he was like, "Wow, oh my gosh, I've heard you're such a good connector." I said, and that's exactly what I'm doing right now is being a good connector.
Mm. Mm-hmm.
So to your point,
Yeah. And I think too, we need to get rid of the mindset of certain networking groups where, okay, you have to show up and you have to give me 5 referrals and things like that. If there's not a point to it, then what is the point? And also too, or you see in groups, somebody will post for, I need um, a dentist. I don't know. And, you know, 500 people chime in about the dentist that they need to use. Well, that's all fine and good, but you haven't asked anything. Is it an adult? Is it a child? Is it, do they need oral surgery? Do they need just a cleaning? What do they need instead
exactly.
of
It's asking the qualifying questions so you know who you're referring to. Exactly. Exactly.
right?
Yes.
And, I listened to a gentleman once who said that the beautiful thing with solopreneurs or independent people is that we have the ability to not have to go wide in relationships. We can go deep.
Right.
And
True.
that to me has been so enriching with my relationships and with my network.
It's really important because where you spend your time comes back to you,
Mm-hmm.
and in good and bad ways.
Mm-hmm.
And that expands well past the networking side of things. But when we're talking about it networking wise, if you're the sum of the 5 people you're around the most, maybe it's the 25 people you're around the most these days because of the interconnectivity we have.
Mm-hmm.
But it does actually really truly come to fruition over time. You see the results of that. And if you start changing because you're not happy with where you're at, you start changing the 5 people you spend the most time around.
Mm-hmm.
I've seen quantum changes in both directions for people that I know during 2020, not just by their own mindset, but by the people they had around them.
Mm.
So,
So let's say we are looking to connect at a higher level in the sense that we want to elevate our network.
mhm.
Any tips for doing that?
Again, it's migrating uphill, as it were. You're always looking to make the next connection up up the ladder, up the hill. And
Mhm,
I don't mean that as far as job position title, although sometimes those go hand in hand,
mhm,
but I mean the next step in the evolution of the dot connecting,
mhm,
where you are trying to bring more of a net worth to your network. So I actually call it net worthing a lot of the time.
mhm,
It's kind of like taking networking, connecting, and intention and running them all together. So net worthing is increasing the net worth of your network in order to increase everybody's overall net worth. And in that case, the last net worth actually does mean financially.
mhm.
But the first part is enriching the people that you have around you by educating them, by bringing them resources, by bringing them better people. And that's one thing that over 20 years of doing dot connecting, I've been very fortunate to have really good people around me. Between the radio show and the TV show, and now the VCast, I meet a lot of people, and I get to assess, this is somebody that would be great for my network, and they were a great guest, but I can take them a step further, and we can go and we can do something else. So again, it's really about again, a spirit of giving too is really important to get yourself up that ladder.
Mhm.
Because people want to give back to people that give.
And I think two different things need to be brought out from what you just said. The first one is in 20 years of dot connecting, this is not a sprint.
No, no. And I even took some years off in the middle of that where I wasn't nearly as active.
Mhm,
But seeds I've planted as far back as 2000 and
right.
2001 are,
Mhm,
still fertile.
mhm.
And it could have been 10, 15 years since I've spoken to someone. But if you connect properly up front and then you just lose track with the person over time, and it happens, suddenly they circle back. You see a LinkedIn post, you see a Facebook post, you get a ping on your phone that suddenly somebody's been, oh, I got your cell number from, another mutual friend, another mutual old contact. It's just unbelievable when that happens. Unbelievable. And
And
it's
you
happening
also,
all the time now.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And you also mentioned different platforms. So, what has been the most successful platform for you to build your network? Has it been LinkedIn? Has it been in person? Has it been podcasting? Has it been just a
Right.
combination of all of it?
Well, it's been a combination of all of it, to be fair. But eh, LinkedIn's changed so much over a 20-year-ish period, 15, 20-year period, that it is, well, 15-year probably period that I've been using it. And but it's changed a awful lot. I mean, I think my sort of origin number is in the couple thousands. So I was on really, really early.
Mhm.
And like I said, I took a hiatus for quite a while. I stayed away from LinkedIn because I just wasn't seeing, any real traction and any real results that I could see. And this was a mistake I made, actually, because I realized now, granted, there are a lot more people on LinkedIn than there were 12, 15 years ago.
Mhm.
But what I've seen is there's been a huge uptick in how people use LinkedIn. So LinkedIn's probably my number one go-to. Um, but I'm not against doing business on a place like Facebook or Instagram.
Mhm.
And I'm not talking B2C, I'm talking B2B.
Mhm.
B2C works on a lot of different mediums. B2B, it just depends, but you can reach people where they're at. And that's the key, is find a platform that fits your message, your deliverable, your service, whatever it is, your product, and talk to people that are in the space to receive on whatever medium that is. It could be Twitter, it could, whatever it is. And there's a lot of different professions that it's going to be a different answer. For me, it's probably mostly LinkedIn. It's the podcasts,
Mhm.
and the, the interviews. And last but not least, it's a couple other like showcasing type of things where you can showcase a client. You can say, hey, here's somebody who we've done this for. So I showcase my clients now. I go out to networks where I know a case study is going to be relevant, and I drop it in and say, hey, this is our showcase of XYZ client or
Mm.
XYZ networking friend of mine. This
Hmm.
is something they just recently did in your field. You might be interested.
Let's say somebody is relatively new to the
Mhm.
whole idea of networking, or want to do it at a higher level. What are your feelings on groups that are kind of pay to play? So you there's a yearly fee or whatever, but you are in with people that have some skin in the game as far as that's. What are your feelings?
Well, my feelings on a lot of those groups is they're almost always, there's a lot of good intention behind them. The execution really depends on who's running that particular chapter of the group, usually.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Sometimes it's the overall organization, but often it's just that chapter. I had the good experience in Atlanta of being in some very strong groups where there was great leadership. And I was very fortunate because they actually taught the people in the group how to network, including me.
Mm-hmm.
I learned a lot there. I cut my teeth there.
Mm-hmm.
That said, on a financial level, when you put money into a group, you obviously need to get at least that much back out
Mm-hmm.
in order to make it a cost justifiable expense in a lot
Right.
of ways.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, honestly, the first couple of years I was doing it, I wasn't getting a return because I had a service that was too expensive for the people in the group's connections and clientele, at least the way they thought about it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I moved into a more B2B oriented chapter or group within, and started seeing some pretty big success then. Again, because I just thought I was doing things wrong. And
Mm-hmm.
then, so I think it's really important if you are new, start anywhere, start somewhere,
Mm-hmm.
find something to do, but that comes down to things like posting on LinkedIn. It comes down to all these other things. You really don't even need to be in a group right now.
Right.
If you get on LinkedIn and you start putting out what is your heart and what's value to you, it takes a while. Don't get me
Mm-hmm.
wrong. You're not going to be a, overnight success in a day. But 12 months from now, 6 months from now, you can really build a community and a following as you get people that are already with a following commenting on what you do and tagging you and asking for
Mm-hmm.
advice from you later on down the line. So I mean, I've had that happen recently as I've started posting more again, and it's pretty remarkable some of the stuff that's happening. So it's really good. I mean, I'm
Yeah.
loving it. So yeah, again, it's start anywhere. I mean, oh, one other thing. If you are doing it on LinkedIn, go to your network that you have, talk to people that you've already worked with, and ask for recommendations. Those recommendations on LinkedIn say way more about you than you can ever say
Mm-hmm.
on your own. It never sounds like tooting your own horn when you say, please check out what other people said about me.
Right.
But it's also tremendously indicative. I love being able to say, hey, take a look at the recommendations I have on my profile. They'll tell you a lot more about me than anything I could possibly tell you.
Mm-hmm.
And, so it's helped me sort of become a business growth catalyst via dot connecting. So I
Mm-hmm.
can go in and help so many different, current day business pains, with what I do, and I can have people refer to me online that way. So you build yourself a step at a time into that. It
Right.
doesn't happen overnight, but start somewhere.
Yeah.
Find a first couple steps you can take. That might be posting, that might be reaching out to people. It might be taking a big chance and reaching out to the one big company you covet and seeing how many of the VPs of whatever you can reach out to,
Mm-hmm.
and just see if you get some traction. One other thing, when you're doing that, use video. Highly, highly, highly recommended for introductions, for outreach, all of it. Use video, whether you record yourself on Zoom and then take it out and produce it somewhere and send it, or whether you use a Vidyard or a Loom or any of the apps that are available for the Android or iOS systems. I mean, there are literally dozens on both platforms, so I'm not even going to try to get into the amount.
Mm-hmm.
But you and also remember, good quality audio matters. Use don't record on a pair of $10 headphones that are plugged into your Android. It's just a bad idea because you won't get the quality you want. You want to, it's the same as anything else. You want to present well, and you get one chance to make a first impression.
Right. And just getting back to the groups for a moment,
Yeah.
I personally found that in-person groups, and I completely agree with you that it depends on the chapters and whatnot, but I have actually found more benefit in groups online than I have local groups.
Well, you're looking at a very diverse selection of people then,
Right.
and it's a much larger selection of people with a much larger network themselves. So,
Right.
I mean, just on
And
a
usually if they are flocking to a group, you all have something inherently in common to begin with.
exactly. Well, the in-person groups are a seat at the table that is exclusive to that seat, and that's the only commonality factor
Right.
technically.
Right.
The chemistry in those groups can be very varied as well. And whether you're actually, I mean, you might be sitting right next to a real estate agent and you could be an appraiser, but if the real estate agent thinks you look like their, drunk uncle, then, you're not going to get referrals. And
Right.
it probably will never be a verbal thing where they say, I can't refer to you because you remind me of Uncle Frank,
Right.
but at the same time, it happens. And when you're online and you've got a chance that you've got 15 people that are appraisers and you're a real estate agent, you can pick who you want to send business to.
Right.
And you want to find somebody obviously in that field local, but if it's marketing, you could pick a marketing consultant who doesn't remind you of your ex-wife or your, ex-husband or your, worst friend in high school or the worst enemy you had in high school, that kind of thing. I mean, there's
Right.
all sorts of these little triggers in our heads that can stop you from networking with people too. I mean, there's a lot of stuff they might be a great person, but if they somehow remind you of somebody that wronged you or you didn't like, it's pretty easy to walk away.
Yeah.
That's another thing you got to be careful about. So,
One more thing. What about any tips for introverts? Because introverts sometimes have a hard time.
absolutely. I'm not an introvert, if you haven't noticed. But I would say that, introvert behavior, usually what I've found in people I know that are introverted, let me put it that way. I don't want to overgeneralize this. I will say from personal experience, the introverts I know, when it comes to networking, they find a medium that works for them. It might be typing out a message. It might be posting on the wall. They might not use video. They might not want to go to an in-person meeting. They might not even want to turn on their camera during Zoom. So again, spoon feed it. You can't eat an elephant in one bite, and networking is an elephant. Connecting is an elephant. They're both separate elephants, actually. And so don't try to dive in, try and do everything, and then say, oh, I failed, or I'm an introvert, I can't do this. Take it a step at a time and listen to the gurus. Listen to the people out there that actually have done this a lot in the past. And I'm not referring to myself. I'm talking about, the folks that are the published folks about this. And it could be a Seth Godin. It could be a John Jantz. It could be a Tim Ferriss. It could be, goodness, I'm trying to think of the gentleman's name, Malcolm Gladwell. I mean, there's a lot of folks that talk about connecting. There's a lot of folks that talk about how to connect. Obviously, I mean, I hope what I brought today is value, but there's other people out there that you can read, you can, listen to, you can explore the options they have. For that matter, just watch what's happening on your LinkedIn wall. And you're going to find people that are good networkers that you can sort of copy, actually. And copying is the sincerest form of flattery. So just don't plagiarize. It'll be.
So last 4 questions for you, Andy. First one is, what's the best piece of advice you were ever given?
It's one of those questions that I love the question, but I hate having to answer it. Because there's actually 3 and they're really quick.
Okay, go.
Always ask the extra question. The question that's sitting in the back of your head, that's finagling around back there, that you're like, oh, I'm a little scared to ask this, or what if I say this? Ask it. Go ahead and ask it. The second one is slow down to go fast. I think it's a John Wooden quote originally. I'm not sure. But slow down to go fast, because if you aren't ready to go fast, if you haven't prepared to go fast, you're going to take the car off the road into the ditch. You can keep it between the ditches if you've slowed down first, no matter how fast you're going. And then last is, you'll never regret being kind. And just, there's the cliche of, everybody's going through something you don't know about, or they're fighting their own battle and those kind of things. And while it's cliche, it's true. A lot of cliches are, but what I get from that is that if you're approaching things from a mindset of being good to other people, about the only thing that can come back to you is people being good to you in the long run. There's, hiccups and road bumps everywhere. And, sometimes you get into a bad run where, a lot of people don't do you right, but don't give up faith on that. Keep being kind and it will come back around. So there you
Love
go.
it.
Yep.
What's one thing on your bucket list?
Traveling the world with my beautiful bride in a long, continuous adventure kind of way, where it's not a trip to Bali or a trip to New Zealand. It's a trip to New Zealand and then China and then Bali and then Tibet and then kind of thing. Literally a world tour.
Nice.
That's the big bucket list.
So when the toy companies get around to making an action figure of you, what 2 accessories will it come with?
Oh boy, I thought about this for a little while, but I think it's a connect the dots book, and a cell phone or a computer with a never-ending battery.
Love it. And last one, Andy, where do people find you?
A bunch of different ways to find me. You can find me at andygreider.com. That'll take you to my LinkedIn profile, which has a lot of my other contact info in it. I'm on Clubhouse at Andy Greider. Cell phone's 404-516-4204. And I do generally try to return calls if you send them. You can text me there too. Or last but not least, you can book an appointment with me at originalchief.connector.com. And believe it or not, I had to put original in front of it because somebody bought Chief Connector before I could get to it a few years ago.
Oh, that's funny. So. And do you want to give us a real quick synopsis of what Not Your Daddy's Prospecting is too? Because I think that's important.
Thanks. So Not Your Daddy's Prospecting is part of how we help employers protect, thrive, grow, and prosper their business. It's taking the idea of online prospecting, online networking, and your brand message and your brand story and your deliverables, your leave behinds, your value adds, doing all that kind of thing upfront at cost. And then, putting the proof in the pudding. We actually have to produce results for you where you're getting business from what we do in order for us to really get paid. Because we don't make money on what we do up front. It's $10,000, $20,000, something like that for what we would normally charge $50 to $100 for. And so you're getting a huge amount of work up front. And then we set up a 2 or 3 or 4 year agreement on the back end where you're, cutting in a commission of a portion of commissions on the sales that come in. So it's a new sort of idea on how to do things. It also gets you a seat at a rapidly expanding symbiotic, synergistic marketing table where it's sort of our own virtual group, like what you mentioned, that all these people are doing business between each other now, the way we've had it set up, but with our insurance agency as well, they've become arrows in the quiver for every kind of business pain that there is out there. So if I've got somebody walking into a business and they say, I have this problem, we have 50 to 60 touch points of either vendor partners, Not Your Daddy's Prospecting clients, or products and services that we can bring to the table that are, and plus we're really, we've got a powerful model, but we're a lot of fun to work with too. So it's a good thing to reach out. And I will say, last but not least, is the model's not for everyone, and not everyone's for the model. And sometimes it's even a timing thing. So, right now we're looking at taking on a couple clients, but a month from now, if I've taken on 3 or 4, I probably won't be taking on anymore for a little while. The one unfortunate thing that's not scalable is my time. So,
very true. Well, I appreciate you spending some with us today. Thanks so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. This has been a blast. What a hoot. Thanks.
Thank you for joining us. Once again, I'm Marlana Semenza, photographer and visual strategist. Please comment, like, or share this episode, and don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss a thing. For more information on how I can help you create your iconic image, visit marlanasemenza.com.